Trametes versicolor, which is more commonly known as the turkey tail fungus, is a polypore mushroom, which means that it's got thousands of tiny pores on the underside of the fruiting body, which are responsible for producing and releasing all of the reproductive spores. And as the name versicolor suggests, this mushroom can present itself in a variety of different colors. It's one of the most adaptive fungal species ever to have been discovered, living and thriving across a diverse range of forest ecosystems, climates, and global latitudes. So it's an abundant species, at home within the edge of the Arctic Circle as well as close to the equator. So it's actually very common and is found in many parts of the world. Turkey tail is a white rot fungus, which means it focuses on breaking down the lignin within hardwood trees. Now, lignins are tough, fibrous compounds that provide structure, and they make up the cell walls of many plants. So, turkey tail is a crucially important ecological recycler. It proliferates throughout forest ecosystems, breaking down dead wood and reducing it to nutrient-dense humus that feeds the rhizosphere, and by association, all of the plants, animals, and microorganisms in the surrounding environment. But turkey tail can also neutralize many chemical toxins from the forest environment, helping to clean up the residue from industrial contamination and atmospheric radiation. And it's for this reason that we must always be mindful of where we forage it from in the wild, because fruiting bodies from contaminated areas can still contain high concentrations of substances that we really don't want to be introducing to our bodies. So turkey tail is an incredibly important stabilizer of forest ecosystems because it can reduce dead trees and dead wood into detritus in record time. And this, of course, enriches the forest floor, but it also nourishes the woodland immune system because in this breaking down process, it can also arrest and transform potentially dangerous contaminants into an inert form. It can be quite an aggressive species because it contains antifungal compounds that give it a competitive ecological edge. But it also contains antimicrobial and antiviral constituents that not only support the health and continuation of the turkey tail fungus, but also offer some benefit and protection to other organisms that share a symbiotic connection to the mycelium. Looking at wild turkey tail and the essential role that it fulfills within its natural environment, this gives us a very clear idea of how it may be of benefit to us as a medicine, and it has been a staple of Asian medicine for many, many centuries, millennia even. Turkey tail has entries in both of the Chinese medicine classics, the Shennong Ben Saojing, or the Divine Farmer's Materia Medica, and Li Shizhen's Great Compendium of Herbs. Traditionally, the mushroom was categorized as having a slightly sweet taste and a mild, cooling nature that has particular associations with the spleen, the liver, and the lungs. Its effect on the spleen was understood to eliminate excess dampness from the body, and it was strongly recommended as a liver tonic and for treating respiratory infections. Now, it was also utilized as an immune amphoteric, which is a medicine that strengthens and stabilizes the function of the immune system. Turkey tail was also believed to strengthen the bones, tendons, and cartilage, and to act as a general tonic that could restore spent vitality. And because of this, it was used as a harmonizing medicine that offered systemic benefits across a number of bodily systems. In order to obtain these benefits, the fruiting body of the mushroom was decocted as a medicinal tea, or it was cooked into soups and broths to imbue the family meals with healing properties. Since turkey tail is so widespread, it's really no surprise that it's also been a part of traditional European and North American herbalism, although recorded use in these parts of the world is a bit more recent when compared to Asian medical systems, but it was only in the 1960s that turkey tail started to gain recognition within the scientific community. Scientifically speaking, this is perhaps the most heavily researched and medically recognized mushroom species that exists, and it's even been a registered anti-cancer medication in Japan and China for many decades already. But before we get into that, what exactly are its clinically proven benefits? Well, firstly, it possesses important protein-bound polysaccharides, beta-glucans, and sterols, which can collectively enhance the function of the immune system. Now, turkey tail is known as a biological response modifier, which means that it can both stimulate and pacify the immune system. So, like a number of other adaptogenic mushroom species, it promotes immune function when the immune system is underactive, and it reduces immunological activity when the immune system has become hypersensitive. In a process that's still not completely understood, turkey tail promotes immune function by making immune cells more effective at their jobs. So it stimulates macrophages to seek out and neutralize foreign pathogens in the body, and those macrophages then release cytokines, which are signaling molecules that communicate the direct experience of the macrophages to other immune cells. So it's like an immune cell discovering a problem and then broadcasting that information like a kind of group email to the entire immune system. So this sensitizes the immune system to a potential threat, meaning that the threat is under control and neutralized as quickly as possible. In the same way, when host tissue has succumbed to an infectious disease, it will release interferons, a type of cytokine that broadcasts information about infected tissue to the surrounding healthy tissue. So then, the unaffected cells can heighten their defenses and resolve the problem with maximum efficiency. And all of this immune activity can be greatly enhanced under the influence of turkey tail. There is an abundance of published data on the immunological benefits of this mushroom, and a lot of that has focused on various types of cancer. Research concerning promyelocytic leukemia, which is a subtype of acute myeloid leukemia, showed that turkey tail can modulate immune function in such a way that it can inhibit the proliferation of human leukemia cells while not negatively affecting the production and function of healthy white blood cells. And a number of different protein-bound polysaccharides have been identified in turkey tail that are responsible for this action. Extracts of turkey tail have also been used in the treatment of cervical and prostate cancer, with clinical results showing that it does possess the ability to inhibit tumor growth, while stimulating superoxide dismutase within the body, which is an antioxidant enzyme that can help to protect the healthy cells of the body from deteriorating when exposed to radiation and chemotherapy. And this is why turkey tail has become a popular adjuvant cancer medicine throughout Asia, because it holds the potential to promote healing and in many cases increase survival rates among those undergoing conventional treatment. Turkey tail has also been used in the treatment of lung, colon, stomach, and breast cancer, as well as sarcoma, which is malignant cancer of the connective tissue, and carcinoma, which is cancer of the epithelial cells, found either in the skin or in the skin-like outer surface of the internal organs. In vitro studies have also shown that a compound known as PSP, which we will explore more in a moment, has strong antiviral activity, and in lab tests it has managed to inhibit the replication of the HIV virus. And also PSK, another thoroughly well-researched compound within this fungus, has antimicrobial activity against Candida, E. coli, and Listeria. All in all, this is one of the most important medicinal mushrooms that we have available to us in the world today. And it also happens to be one of the most exhaustively well-researched species as well, which adds significant weight to all of the health claims that are made. Plus, it really augments the rich and ancient lineage of traditional Asian medical systems. But even with this much conclusive evidence to verify its usefulness as a medicine, there still remains some confusing half-truths surrounding its commercial production, which can of course be very misleading. So to get a better understanding of this, let's take a look at when turkey tail first appeared in the peripheral awareness of modern medicine. In the mid-1960s, a Japanese chemical laboratory called Kuriha began experimenting with turkey tail after an acquaintance of one of their staff members had allegedly recovered from late-stage gastric cancer, and their main source of therapy was a Chinese herbal medicine formula where turkey tail was the primary active ingredient. The Kuriha lab became very interested in this, and they began investigating the active compounds of the mushroom, and after a few years of testing, they had isolated what they believed to be the primary active compound, the highest concentration of which was found not so much in the fruiting body of the mushroom, but in the mycelium. Now, this compound was a protein-bound polysaccharide that the Kuriha lab named PSK, an acronym for polysaccharide Kuriha. After discovering PSK, years of clinical trials followed to determine its safety and to verify that it was indeed an effective medicine. And the results were pretty conclusive, and PSK was patented and subsequently recognized by the Japanese health authorities as a natural adjunct treatment for cancer. Now, in the late 1970s, it was officially made available to the public as a prescription medication called Crestin. In the following years, Crestin became an incredibly popular drug in many Asian countries, but in the 1980s, a Chinese scientist called Dr. Qingyao Yang discovered an even more potent bioactive constituent from a different strain of turkey tail mycelium. Now, this compound was a polysaccharopeptide, and it was aptly named PSP. And in the early 1990s, it was certified by the Chinese government as a prescription medicine. PSK and PSP are chemically very similar. Actually, they're almost identical. Both of them are protein-bound polysaccharides, but they're each produced from different strains of turkey tail mycelium. Now, PSK is found in the CM101 strain, whereas PSP is produced from the COV1 strain. Structurally speaking, they are almost exactly the same, except that PSK contains the essential sugar fucose, but not arabinose or rhamnose, whereas conversely, PSP does contain arabinose and rhamnose, but it doesn't contain fucose. Now, aside from this seemingly small difference, they are exactly the same. But this minor divergence actually signifies a major therapeutic distinction between the two compounds. They do both perform very similar functions within the body, but PSP certainly seems to be the more effective of the two. Now, PSP appears to be significantly better able to sensitize white blood cells to a range of different pathogens or diseased tissue, and it improves the efficiency of communication between the numerous cells of the immune system. PSP has an optimizing effect on macrophages and natural killer cells. It can reduce chronic inflammation, it has potent antiviral properties, and it can support the natural regeneration of the liver. It also appears to have stronger chemoprotective effects than PSK, making conventional cancer treatment potentially less painful and debilitating. Like PSK, there has been a lot of research conducted on PSP, from in vitro tests, in vivo animal studies, as well as many clinical trials on healthy people and cancer patients undergoing chemo or radiotherapy. And this is very interesting because there's not a lot of natural herbal or fungal medicines that can actually boast such conclusive results against the scrutiny of modern science. It might even be fair to say that many of the benefits associated with turkey tail can be found in PSP alone. Now, PSK and PSP have been widely understood by the scientific community to be the two main active substances in turkey tail, and while there is truth to this, we need to try and understand why this is the case, rather than simply isolating these compounds and removing them from their natural context, because when we do that, we are essentially creating pharmaceutical drugs. And something that we do know is that many drugs that are derived from natural origins actually carry with them a lot of negative side effects, whereas in their original whole form, they don't. So drugs like this may have very important uses in certain circumstances, but they're no longer in their whole original natural form, and therefore we just can't understand them in the same way. When we turn towards a natural substance for medicine, there's never really a single component that's doing all of the heavy lifting single-handedly, but there are compounds that can act a lot like kingpins that are heavily involved in pretty much every medicinal benefit on offer. But it's really important that we resist the temptation to look at this in a myopic way, because it can be a big mistake to do that. There's nearly always hundreds or maybe even thousands of other constituents involved, and some of them can be barely perceptible in their quantity, yet their active role might be absolutely fundamental to the overall success of the medicine. The assortment of cofactors and accessory nutrients can help to create an overall entourage effect, which is something that isn't completely understood yet on a scientific level, but it can be clearly observed and is crucially important nonetheless. And this is where modern medicine has all too often fallen short, because it loves to identify one or maybe two active ingredients and then just discard everything else like it's basically worthless. And this is a very linear and short-sighted way of looking at it, because nature just doesn't work like that. So in order to understand these incredible natural medicines a bit better, I think it's important that we try to adopt a more big picture way of thinking about them, where we can learn to see value in the subtle and less obvious factors at play. So PSK and PSP are without a doubt astonishing medical discoveries, and using them as isolated drugs might be incredibly useful in certain situations, but using whole extracts of turkey tail that are rich in these compounds, rather than just keeping these compounds and throwing everything else away, this might be a wiser strategy for regular use and for the majority of health circumstances that we may find ourselves in. Whole extracts of turkey tail are generally made from either the fruiting body, which is the reproductive organ of the mushroom, or we have the mycelium, which are like the roots of the mushroom, the fine white threads that make up the vast majority of the fungal cells. Now, making extracts of the fruiting body is something that's been done by indigenous cultures for a very, very long time. But extracting from the pure mycelium without unnecessary substrate and fillers in the finished product is something that can only really be achieved with the help of industrial fermentation and extraction, where the variables can be fixed and the end result can be repeated with precision time after time. So firstly, let's look at the traditional approach to working with the fruiting body. Now, originally, indigenous medicine always made use of the fruiting body because it was so much easier to work with, and harvesting mycelium from within rotting wood or soil was not exactly practical. So, from antiquity right up until quite recent history, the fruiting body was really the only thing available. Excellent medicine can be procured from wild turkey tail fruiting bodies and from wood-grown, organically cultivated fruiting bodies as well, and there are a wealth of benefits that can be attributed to the fruiting body alone. I mean, this is how turkey tail earned its formidable reputation in traditional Chinese medicine after all. The systems of Eastern and Western medicine have entirely different philosophies though. Chinese medicine, for example, recognizes subtle energies and therapeutic forces within this mushroom that Western medicine doesn't acknowledge because it has no way of measuring or understanding these things according to its limiting worldview. However, Western medicine does recognize many unique and important polysaccharides, triterpenes, and sterols that are found within the turkey tail fruiting body that are known to enhance immune function and promote healing. The fungal cells of the fruiting body are very fibrous and they're quite tough though, so it's not really edible, but we can prepare it the traditional way, decocting it into a tea or using the tea as a liquid base for soups, broths, and meals. The fruiting body can also be extracted into strong alcohol. We can use ethanol to create an alcohol-based extract which will contain more of the terpenoid compounds and the sterols. And if this is combined with the hot water extraction, it produces a dual extract with a broader arrangement of medicinal constituents. These time-tested folk methods can produce quality medicine if they're done properly, and of course with some know-how they can be created at home, but there can be a lot of variation in the end result because there are a number of factors to consider, such as, are the mushrooms that we're using wild or are they cultivated? If they're wild, were they harvested from a pristine, uncontaminated environment? And if they're cultivated, were they grown on wood or on grain? And the solvents used to produce the extract, the water and the alcohol, are these good quality? You know, these are all variables that will determine the quality of the finished product, so we really must take these things into consideration. But what about people that are not able to produce their own medicine, or maybe suffering and in need of the purest and most potent form of turkey tail that contains a significant presence of these protein-bound polysaccharides that we've been discussing? So this is where we enter the often confusing realm of commercial mushroom extracts. I don't really think it's necessary to explore the ins and outs of every single turkey tail product here, so instead let's focus our attention on PSK and PSP, because the enormity of research behind these two compounds is precisely why turkey tail has become so widely recognized as a legitimate treatment for immunological disorders in the context of modern scientific medicine. Plus, the research on PSK and PSP is what a lot of manufacturers are using as marketing, but despite this, a lot of manufacturers are not following the cultivation and extraction methods that are needed in order to create a product that actually contains notable amounts of these compounds. So the marketing and the finished product don't always reflect one another. As medically recognized as PSK and PSP are, we need to re-emphasize here that they are unique to two different strains of mycelia and they're not typically extracted from the fruiting body. Now, the highest potency of these compounds and what the abundance of research is based upon are these two strains of mycelia that we've mentioned earlier, CM101 and COV1. Some commercial extract powders do provide percentages of polysaccharides in order to verify the potency of the product. And while this is a step in the right direction, it can also be misleading because it's easy to create a high percentage of polysaccharides. A lot of extract powders contain excipients like rice or bamboo starch or maltodextrin because these things stop the powders from clumping together and they can extend the shelf life. And this can be very useful, but all of these things are starches. And so, of course, the powder is going to test high for polysaccharides, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're from the mushroom. Some products are created from mycelial biomass, which is mycelium grown on a solid substrate like rice, oats, or rye. And it's not really possible to extricate the mycelium from the substrate that it was grown on because the two become kind of woven together on a cellular level. And even though the mycelium consumes a lot of the substrate, some of it does often still remain in the finished product. And so again, when it's tested, it's going to test high for polysaccharides, some of which are not necessarily from the mushroom, but again, from the grain that it was grown on. It's also worth mentioning that unextracted mushrooms in general are notoriously difficult to digest because the chitin that constitutes the fungal cell walls is incredibly tough, and it can only really be broken down in two ways. Firstly, it can be broken down by the digestive enzyme chitinase, which is unfortunately something that almost every single digestive system in everybody alive today is severely deficient in. And the second way that it can be broken down is through exposure to considerable heat, which is why traditionally edible mushrooms were always cooked before they were eaten, and mushrooms like turkey tail were always decocted into teas and soups and things like that, so that the cell wall could be broken down and the nutrients within the cell could be released and available to us for medicine. So without first extracting the mushroom material, whether it's fruiting body or mycelium, if we just take a dried mushroom powder, so it's just a mushroom dried and ground up into a powder, there's no extraction taking place. This is basically just potential medicine locked away inside a prison of chitin. And if we're taking a mushroom powder supplement like this, it basically just goes in one end and out the other with minimal, if any, benefit along the way. So when we're taking mushroom powders, we really want to be using extract powders where the structural fiber has been removed and the powder is essentially just a concentrated source of the medicinal compounds from the mushroom. So you'll know if the product that you bought is indeed an extract because it will say so on the label. And if it doesn't say so, then it probably isn't. As we discussed earlier, out of the two primary compounds in turkey tail, the scientific research does point towards PSP as being superior in a number of ways. It has a broader range of health benefits, a higher potency, and therefore requires a smaller dose, and if the correct strain of mycelium is grown through liquid fermentation, then a very pure, uncontaminated, and high-quality source of it can be produced very quickly, in just a matter of days actually, and it will be completely free from additives and unnecessary substrate making their way into the finished product. But liquid fermentation of the mycelium costs significantly more to produce than something like mycelial biomass, but its therapeutic potential is exponentially more potent, especially when it's extracted properly using the original methods of hot water extraction and alcohol precipitation. Turkey tail is the true definition of ancient medicine that is possibly more relevant to our current era than ever before. Now, people knew of its regenerative power thousands of years ago, but now with the development of technology and scientific research, we can really start to explore its therapeutic potential from a multitude of different angles. So we can apply the insight provided by the electron microscope while hopefully keeping that insight rooted in the natural big picture thinking of traditional medical systems from centuries past. So turkey tail is, without any doubt, a medicine for the ages.